Okay, so this is on the heels of the telehealth, so kind of intro the telehealth, and then switch over to the in-person. We just try to talk about like some of the...
Outro the telehealth.
Yes, outro that.
Well,
but
we're
it's
introing.
introing.
It's an outro intro.
It's an innie outie. Outie innie?
Like a belly button.
No, I'm talking about the car, the Audi.
Oh, yeah.
Like the A4.
Oh, yeah. A4 could be an A6.
You get it in the Audi?
Yeah, I get it now. And that's embarrassing. It took so long. There's nothing about that out loud.
You are old. Would you like me to say it louder?
What's that? I'm sorry, I was just trying to drink my Ensure.
Do you need your glasses to hear me?
Yeah.
I
I can't hear through these very well. What are those things? Oh, those are glasses. My audiologist gave me some new glasses.
I can't even. I gotta pull it together. Okay.
Oh, man.
Okay, so what are we doing? This is a podcast. My brain shut off for a second. Powered down. I gotta get it back.
I gotta get it back. Just
okay,
go lean
in
into
person.
it. Just lean into
in
it.
person. Okay, here we go. I know what I'm doing. Here we go. I am a professional.
And doggone it, people like it.
Yes, exactly. You just... Okay. Hey everyone, welcome to the Shrink Think Podcast. I'm Aaron, and I'm here with my co-host, Nathan, and we are following up from a previous episode that we were talking about telehealth, aka video sessions or video therapy. And if you have not listened to that episode, I want to encourage you to go back and listen to it. We were kind of talking about how it came to be, not like the original genesis of it, like computers were developed back in the, it's not that, but like kind of some of the prominence of it through the pandemic, and how it's being used, and maybe kind of how you can value it more today if you were engaged in telehealth or video therapy.
Yeah, I want to add to that because I think what you're saying there is important, but even while we were talking, we kind of came to some conclusions of different ways that you need to actually be intentional with it. So don't assume that, like, oh yeah, you did one, I missed that one, I don't care, I already understand it. Don't assume that. It's worth listening to, not just because we're awesome, but because we are.
In fact, you might benefit from listening to it a couple of times, sharing it with your friends, subscribing. If you're on Spotify or Apple Music, really anything, just give us a review. That would probably help you to absorb the material.
Yes, I would like you to give 6 stars. 5 stars is too American.
Exactly, right. I think that 6 stars sounds a little like deadly. You're kind of... Anyway, so today we're going to be talking about not telehealth, but actually in-person therapy. And you might be thinking, if you're listening, what's the point? Like, okay, so you go in, what are you going to talk about? Like, how to like lay down on the couch, or like, talk about your dreams, or no, but we want to talk about the in-person dynamics and how it's different from telehealth or video therapy. So Nate, why don't you get us started?
Well, one thing that I try to do actually with clients, they'll come in, like they'll say something like, oh, do you do virtual or in person? And I will say in person, because I kind of don't want them to, a person to kind of go, oh, thank goodness you're doing virtual. Let's do that. I try to convince people to come in. There just is a huge difference in attention and integration, and there's a secret sauce that happens inside of the connection that we have one to another as these things that we are called humans.
It's like the Chick-fil-A sauce, except it's in therapy.
Yes.
That's how secret it is.
It is, and I'm not going to talk any more about it.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah. So in person does things that virtual, I think, honestly cannot do. I'll give you one example. On virtual counseling, like on video and Zoom, we learned something in the pandemic, which was people get what's called, they started calling it Zoom fatigue. And the reason why is because you're looking at the person on your screen and you're not having an eye-to-eye contact. Like you just can't, it cannot happen because the camera is in a different spot. Mm-hmm. So your eyes are trying to connect to this person, but constantly they have to give up. It's like your brain is giving up that connection. It would be like an internet connection that's spotty, where you're just not quite, and so your brain after a while just got exhausted. Like we were getting tired doing this all day as therapists when we normally wouldn't. Like
if we were to about the
yep.
with
what'd you
to the
I
and
was,
I with to
okay, well, stop annoying you.
Right.
I know you're annoying.
Like 5 seconds of
I'm already annoyed.
I had that earlier today in my meeting. I don't need more of this on the podcast.
Well, that's the other thing too, is like we are not in 6G, for example, yet. You know, like where they're going there. And I say that because we still have these connections that, for whatever reason, just the video will just do that.
Look free. It's usually something like,
yeah, it's like you need to get that video for that. I know, but I'm saying the people need to see that.
Yeah,
anyway.
Yeah, go to our YouTube channel to watch that. But, to that point, I know this is about in person. I mean, that's why I've got my camera situated to where my laptop, it's like right above where my camera would be, so that wherever I'm looking on the screen to see the person, I've got my camera close by there. So if my eyes are a little bit lower, it's somewhere close. And then sometimes I won't even look at the screen. I'll look at my camera as though I'm looking at another person. It's just I'm looking at this camera, right? Because you can tell if you're the other person, if you're the client, that I'm looking closer to where that is, and you feel a little bit more connection. But yeah, it's not the same as when you're literally, like right now, I'm sitting across from you and I'm looking directly into your eyes. I can see all of your facial expressions, your body posture, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and there's certain things in person that like, so I know a lot of folks will do this, like therapists will do EMDR virtually, and I'm not anti that. For me, I've had a few sessions of EMDR in person with clients where they have all of a sudden gone into the fetal position on the couch because of encountering some kind of memory or emotion, and they let themselves go and just started crying really hard. In virtual, if that were to happen, if I was doing EMDR virtually, which is completely possible, I personally, as a therapist, get nervous about, if the person were to do that, I would just not see them. They would just disappear, and I wouldn't know like what I'm supposed to do. I don't know if there's something. Are we call emergency services? Like, what happened? Is this EMDR related? Is it something totally different, like a freaking heart attack? Anyway, there are limits. So there's treatments in person that I could see that you can evaluate. There's certain situations with EMDR where I know I would be comfortable doing them. But then there's the times where maybe not. And so in person just takes that all off. Like you don't worry about that. You're making more your clinical decisions just like you always would, And I also think too, prior to the pandemic, because one of the things we talked about in the other episode, yeah, is the convenience factor. And my pushback to that is, well, you could make it before the pandemic. I mean, it was did your life change like in your car so dramatically or in your house?
No, it's more like you experienced the convenience and you're like, oh, that was really convenient. I don't want to go back to, the inconvenience, quote unquote. And it really was not an inconvenience. You made it work. You prioritized it, and you never called it inconvenient. Or maybe occasionally you did, but you were like, it's worth it. This is what I do to get to my therapy appointment, right? But when you eliminate that on telehealth, now all of a sudden going back in person, it's this thing that was normal, that was considered like worth it or just part of the, it's baked into the cake. You're calling that part of it inconvenient, and you're trying to dispose of it and get rid of it, which is actually, in a certain sense, devaluing the entire process. Because there is something to be said for getting in your car and driving to the appointment, preparing yourself mentally, thinking about, like having a little bit of time and space to think about what are we going to talk about, if you haven't already decided that. And then afterward, having a little bit of a debrief for like, okay, what just happened? What do I need to synthesize and integrate from that appointment into my mind or into my life, and then transition into the rest of my life. It's like a little buffer and insulation on either side of it. That's actually quite valuable.
Yeah, I think one of the things that several clients I've had do that come in person. I mean, I can't make anybody do anything, but in these situations, I haven't even necessarily said you should do it, but they'll like go out after a session and walk around the building in the parking lot. Obviously that's in the summer because Portland. But in that time of being able to kind of like walk through something and then before you get in your car can be really helpful. I would say honestly 50% of the people coming in are thinking about what they want to make sure that they understand they need on their drive in. Be like, okay, it's like they now have a routine. Like, okay, I'm getting in the car, what's been going on? I got a 20-minute drive. I'm not going to listen to the radio or listen to anything. I'm just going to try to understand what's going on in my own head so I know what to do. So that space, I guess, is a big deal. And it kind of naturally occurs a bit more when you're in person, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And so I've got a colleague, Dr. Ranjir. He's a psychologist from India. And I was talking with him about this before we were recording. And he's like, oh, yeah, I could share a couple of things about this. So I guess let's like bring him on and ask him just a couple of questions about like what it's like in terms of like going to these appointments, being in person, and what that's like in a different country. So
yeah, well, I guess I'll just ask him. Ranjir, what do you prefer, having gone through both? Like, are you more of an in-person therapist? Oh, you're a psychologist. That's right, you're a psychologist. Do you do stuff more in person? Do you stuff equally telehealth, and do you have a preference?
Yes, first of all, I would like to thank you for having me on your show. It is quite an honor to be here. I really like the content you guys are putting out. I really like how informative and also entertaining that you guys are on this podcast. So
thank you.
So thank you. Oh yeah, thanks for having it. It's really great, really kind of you to say. Yeah, I'm actually more of an in-person kind of a therapist. In India, we are walking to our appointments. This is great because you have time to move your body, and when your legs are moving back and forth, it is kind of like you were talking about EMDR before. It is like simulating this bilateral stimulation, which is good for the brain to process information. It is very helpful in getting you prepared for the session. Your mind can be clear and be processing all the things that is happening in your life to prepare you for this therapy appointment. And then afterwards, you can use that time where you are walking from the appointment, getting fresh air, where your body, your brain can be absorbing all of this fresh breeze, this wind that is happening in your face.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, do you really even use technology very much? Like when it comes to video, like we do the phone thing here. I know that you do. I know that you have phones. Don't get me wrong. Of course.
Yes,
you
of
do.
course we have telephones.
Right. I don't.
And cellular phones. People have smartphones. Yes.
Is that how most of the telecommuting happens? Like most of the virtual appointments would happen that way, or would a person be at their own place where they live doing it?
People are most likely going to be by their computers. It is not as common that people will be on their devices, like in their cars or going for a walk. They are more likely to be somewhere that is private because they want that information to be very kept secret.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Well, and that's what in-person does. In-person provides privacy, kind of more in a guaranteed way.
Right. I mean, there's something to be said for, when you leave where like your office or your home or whatever, and you go into somebody else's office, a counseling, like a clinic or whatever, and then you're in this room, the door is closed, and like you're in this space where, when we talk about confidentiality, we're really talking about in this in-person space, everything is sort of housed there. And that's actually, I think, quite important because when you're doing telehealth, if you're in your car, your office, or wherever, your home office or whatever, it's kind of like sometimes that difficult material, like if you're working through something painful or difficult, there's something actually really great about being able to leave it in the counseling office and then to go back into your life. It's kind of like, I know sometimes we'll talk about having people leave that difficult material here. Just imagine mentally that it stays here so that you can get a break from it and then come back to it in the next session. Dr. Rangier, is that something that you've experienced, or what's your take on that? Yeah, I think that is a very good point that you are bringing up here. There is a compartmentalization that can happen when you come to the therapy office. The things you are talking about have a different quality to them because they are not in your space, they are in the space of the therapist. And so, when you are discussing your trauma or your stress, your anxiety, your depression, these things take on a new meaning that you and your therapist create together that is unique and different to that relationship that is in person that you cannot have over video. So when you leave, it is like you've unpacked some bags and lightened your load, whether it is emotionally, mentally, physically, because your body contains it. You leave it in the office, you unpack those bags, and then you walk away lighter. This is a great benefit to in-person therapy, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, Peter Levine actually talks about he calls it the felt sense in the book Waking the Tiger.
Great book.
It's this idea that I think he uses the example where if you're walking through the forest and something changes in it and you're totally by yourself, you feel it. You just feel like, and you might even stop and go, okay, what just happened? You can just feel around you like the stuff that's going on. You can't do that in a virtual way.
Right.
So when you are in person, you are sharing a felt sense. You literally can feel like with the stuff that's going on in the room. Each one of you is client and therapist, and that is something that is huge. It's not like, well, that's okay. I'll sacrifice that today, partner. Like, no, that's not a good move, bro.
Right. And Dr. Rangier, you're out of time. Thanks for being here. I just want to let you move on to your next meeting here, but I just want to say thank you for being here. We'd love to have you on our show.
That was great.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. It is quite an honor being here. I really, again, appreciate the work you guys are doing and keep it up. Thank you. Appreciate that. So back to this point that you were making about the in-person, there's like a vibe or I hate to use a word like energy, but it's like this relational thing. And you could talk about like mirror neurons, all that kind of stuff.
You could.
There's something that does happen when I'm in person with somebody and they make a little shift. I can't usually see it on video, but there's like a shift, whether it's in their body or the kind of the energy changes. I can see some things on their faces, like all these things that are happening that I'm gathering as a therapist. And then I start feeling it and I'm like, what is that feeling, right? Oh, what's this? Oh, is there I think there's disappointment, or, oh, you're feeling there's some shame that entered the room, right? I can feel that. And then I can speak to it. And this is the huge benefit of therapy in general, but also in-person therapy is being able to bring that stuff and then mirror it back to your client so that they can see and be reflected or see their reflection in what you're presenting back to them, and then interact essentially with themselves a little bit better, or have some greater awareness about themselves.
Yeah, that is probably an entire piece there, because I don't want to denigrate the virtual counseling entirely. Well, I'm definitely not doing it. It definitely serves
mostly.
Purpose.
Just not entirely.
Yeah. Just mostly. Well, probably
an inch of its life.
Come here, virtual counseling. Come here. Break the wrist. Walk away. My interesting thing about that is, so I had a person that I was meeting with, and I met with them when they were a kid, and then they re-entered therapy as an adult, but virtually, because they were in a totally another country. And so it was one of those things where literally I was allowed to do it because it was COVID, because the insurance stuff had locked down, and there was a military situation involved, which everybody was okay with. It was kind of weird that it got okay. It was like, I don't know, I guess you could call it once in a lifetime. But we're doing the video thing. Okay. I had not seen this person since they were a kid. So now I'm seeing them for the first time, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of weird. So then, anyways, time goes by, and he comes in after probably 2 years of doing video stuff now and then. and I've seen him for the first time, and I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be interesting to see how I feel about this. Like, is it still going to feel so awkward? And it didn't. I was like, oh, okay. Like, it just was like picking up where we left off type of thing. And so there is that connection definitely can exist virtually. It's just that when you're doing in person, the experience of it actually adds an entire other element that I feel like a lot of people are so willing to sacrifice. And it's like, don't do that.
Yeah, I'll give you an example from my own experience with my therapist during COVID. I saw her mostly video, and actually entirely video. And I remember the first time that I could go in person, and it was like, oh, like I can actually meet you in person. And I did, and like one of the things was like, oh, like you're taller than I thought you are, or it's like that's different, right? Because you just don't see any of that. But then it was also it's interesting. I noticed my communication changing or shifting from the video, from being a little bit like one directional, and it's not like I was just talking the whole time, but it felt more like I was talking at a screen versus when I was sitting across from her, it was more like, oh, now I'm talking with a person and we're having like this dialogue. It just felt so much more different, and obviously it is different, but I guess the thing I'm getting at is I thought telehealth was good and it was helpful, and I was like, this is great, enough to keep doing it for quite a while. But then when I had this in person, I was like, oh, this is even better. This is way better. It's kind of like if you just relegate yourself to the lesser, if you have a choice, obviously we're talking about if you have the option, right, between the two. Telehealth is great, but in person is way better. It was a significant difference because of that relational element that had an impact on me. And then all these things we're talking about, like the time, because she lives 30 minutes away from where I am, or the office is 30 minutes away from where I am. So that time gave me some time to debrief, and that whole experience was just far superior.
I think of it like a person, if you picture like a lake and there's a dock, and you virtuals like you're out at the end of the dock. You can see the entire lake.
Beautiful.
And it's beautiful. It's great. And you can sit there with your legs kicking over back and forth as you it's like you're with the lake. With in person, it's more like you can get in the lake, feel all of what that feels like, and you can also get back out.
Or hop in a sailboat or another motorboat, right, and travel around the edges and see more of the contours of the outside of the lake or whatever.
Right. So
from different angles.
Just a little metaphor analogy.
You can like see the sunset from the other side because it's behind you from the dock.
You could go to the store that's by the lake.
That's
Get
true.
A little ice cream.
But then you're spending more money and you're gaining weight. So maybe in person isn't as great of an experience.
Oh, my lantern.
In person is going to cause you to spend money and gain weight.
Like right now you're virtually experiencing this and you're like, thank God I'm not there. But we are in person and experience this. You know what, guys? Have a great day.
That was awesome. I love when we just roll like that. That was so good.
No, there's nothing I keep doing this.
What did you think about the whole Dr. Frontier?
I was sitting there thinking, I really hope somebody doesn't just run the wrong way with this, like a cancel culture type of thing.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think so, because I don't think it's not pejorative. It's not whatever making fun of. It's just an accent, and then it's just describing the things that we're whatever. Just like we'll have I think we should have like a couple of British guys on. We have these. I don't know what we can make up something like sociologists or I don't know something.
Yeah.
And they just go banter. They're just talking like this. They just have an interesting dynamic between them.
Yeah, it's like, what's going on over there on the other side of the old pond?
Oh, it's like our lake analogy. Did you guys listen to our episode? No, we haven't heard your show once.
No, it doesn't even get over the top of the freaking water. Doesn't make it over that way. You're going to have a plane fly it by and drop it off?
There's like a underground tunnel cable system or something you guys could listen to. Anyway.
Yeah.
Alrighty.